the first screams erupted from the streets below. At first, the sound barely reached the glass-paneled offices of Trump Tower's upper floors, blending into the usual chaos of New York City. But then the screaming intensified. It became a chorus of terror that echoed off the steel and glass of Midtown Manhattan. David Mercer, a former NYPD officer turned private security guard for Trump Tower, frowned as he glanced out the towering windows. Down below, Wall Street executives and tourists were trampling one another, running from something. The yellow taxis that once clogged Fifth Avenue now sat abandoned, their drivers missing or worse. "What the hell's going on?" muttered Alex Carter, a sharp-dressed journalist who had been in the tower for an interview. His fingers tightened around his press badge as he squinted through the glass. A sudden crash shook the building. A police helicopter whirled dangerously low, its side door flung open, an officer frantically firing his weapon downward. A second later, the chopper lost control, spinning wildly before smashing into the upper floors of a nearby building. The explosion sent a fireball into the sky. Glass and debris rained onto the street. David's radio crackled to life. "All security units, get to the lobby now." Without hesitation, David bolted for the elevator. Alex, sensing that something was horribly wrong, ran after him. Down below, the lobby of Trump Tower had descended into pure chaos. A swarm of terrified civilians slammed against the revolving doors, their screams filling the high-ceilinged atrium. A security officer, his uniform soaked in blood, stumbled back toward the reception desk. "They're biting. They're fucking biting people," he gasped before collapsing. The glass doors shattered as the first infected slammed through. A woman in a business suit, her face contorted in rage, threw herself at a screaming man, sinking her teeth into his throat. Blood sprayed the marble floors as more infected surged inside. David burst out of the elevator just in time to see his colleague, Luis, fire his pistol into the oncoming horde. The bullets barely slowed them down. "Barricade the doors!" David shouted, grabbing a fallen metal stanchion and shoving it against the entrance. The infected outside threw themselves at the glass, their bloodied hands smearing against it, their soulless eyes fixed hungrily on the people inside. "Where's the boss?" asked one of the security guards. "Upstairs," Luis said grimly. "And unless we do something fast, we're all dead." Meanwhile, on the 58th floor, a young man in an expensive suit paced anxiously inside a luxury office. Eric Langston, son of billionaire real estate mogul Richard Langston, had just been live streaming a stock market update when his phone exploded with news alerts. "Breaking, NYC under attack. Bizarre virus turns people rabid." His personal assistant, Lily, clutched a tablet. "Eric, we need to get out of here." The penthouse had its own private elevator, but if the lobby was already compromised, escape wouldn't be easy. A sudden banging at the door made them both freeze. A muffled voice rasped from the other side. "Help, please." Eric hesitated. "Is that?" Before he could finish, the door burst open. A blood-covered man staggered inside, one of his father's executives. His eyes were wild, his jaw trembling unnaturally. Then he lunged. Lily screamed as the infected man grabbed her arm, sinking his teeth into her wrist. Eric backed away in horror. "No, no, no, no." Lily shoved the man off, but it was too late. The bite mark on her arm was deep, and blood poured down her hand. Eric's heart pounded. His father was in meetings overseas, and he was the only Langston left in Trump Tower. If the city was collapsing, they needed to escape, now. Back in the lobby, the barricade wasn't going to hold much longer. "We need to move," David shouted, shoving Alex toward the stairwell. "We go up. If the elevators fail, we're stuck." The horde crashed through the remaining glass. Screams filled the air as the undead tore into the trapped civilians. David fired his pistol, but there were too many. "This way," Luis called, leading them toward the service stairwell. David, Alex, and a handful of others bolted for the stairs just as the undead swarmed the lobby. The city was falling. The dead were rising. And Trump Tower had just become their prison. The pounding on the stairwell door was relentless. Muffled groans and inhuman shrieks echoed through the metal as the infected battered against it. David Mercer pressed his shoulder against the door, bracing it while Luis jammed a broken broom handle into the push bar to keep it shut. "That won't hold them for long," Alex Carter said, his chest heaving from the sprint upstairs. "We just need time," David growled, wiping sweat from his brow. The group had made it to the 20th floor, one of the office spaces. Half a dozen survivors huddled in the dimly lit hallway, their faces pale with fear. Among them was a terrified receptionist, an older janitor clutching a mop handle like a weapon, and two tourists who had just been taking pictures in the lobby when the outbreak hit. "Anyone got service?" the janitor, Clyde, asked. Alex pulled out his phone. "Nothing. Cell towers might be down." David exhaled sharply. "We can't just sit here. We need a plan. That stairwell door isn't reinforced, and if they break through..." A distant thud made them all freeze. It came from the far end of the hallway. "More of them," the receptionist whispered. David signaled for silence, then slowly crept forward. The hallway was eerily empty, executive offices on both sides, but no movement. He reached a corner and peeked around. The break room door was slightly open. Something inside shuffled. David's hand tightened around his pistol. He motioned for Luis to follow. Together, they moved toward the door, guns raised. David kicked it open. Inside, a young woman yelped and dropped a metal thermos. "Wait! Don't shoot," she gasped. Luis exhaled in relief. "Jesus." The woman, Rachel Owens, wore a blood-stained white blouse and had a makeshift bandage wrapped around her left arm. She wasn't infected, at least not yet. I was hiding when it all started," she stammered. "One of the executives got bitten on the elevator. I ran. Locked myself in here." Alex stepped forward. "Are you hurt?" She hesitated, then lifted the sleeve on her arm. A deep scratch ran across her skin, but there was no bite. "It's not from them," she said quickly. "I cut myself trying to break open a vending machine." David nodded. "You'll be fine. But we can't stay here. Those things will keep coming." Luis ran a hand through his short black hair. "We need to find a safe floor, somewhere we can barricade properly. Or maybe the penthouse." "Eric Langston is up there," Alex said. "If the son of a billionaire is still alive, he's got security measures in place." "But how do we get there?" Clyde asked. "Elevators ain't an option. And I ain't climbing 38 flights of stairs." David clenched his jaw. "First, we secure this floor. We find supplies, weapons, anything that can help. Then we figure out how to get higher." Rachel nodded. "There's a security office on this floor. They might have a map of the building, alternate routes, emergency exits." "Then let's move," David said. Meanwhile, on the 58th floor, Eric Langston stood at the penthouse balcony, staring at the city below. New York was gone. Smoke billowed from crumbling buildings. Helicopters circled in the distance, but none came to help. Inside, Lily sat on the couch, her arm throbbing where she had been bitten. She hadn't turned, yet. But she could feel it creeping through her veins. "You need to get out of here," she whispered. Eric didn't respond. He couldn't. The penthouse was secure for now, reinforced doors, bulletproof glass, but food was limited. And if Lily turned? A loud knock on the private elevator door made him jump. "Who the hell?" A voice came through the speaker. "Mr. Langston, it's Vincent. We have a problem." Vincent Chong, his father's personal security chief. Eric hesitated, then opened the door. Vincent stepped in, accompanied by two other armed men. Their expressions were grim. "The lower floors are overrun," Vincent said. "In the military, they're not coming." Eric's stomach dropped. "What?" Vincent exhaled. Word is, the government is considering firebombing the city. They're not risking containment. We need to get out, now. Eric's mind raced. His father had always planned for worst-case scenarios. Somewhere in Trump Tower was an emergency exit route, a way out that the public didn't know about. I think my father has a private escape route, Eric muttered. Vincent's eyes narrowed. Then we find it. Before it's too late. Back on the 20th floor. David and his group reached the security office. Luis jimmied the lock open, and they rushed inside. The room was lined with monitors, most showing chaos. The lobby camera revealed only a bloodbath, bodies twitching as the undead feasted. But then, something on another screen made David freeze. The rooftop. A helicopter hovered there, its searchlight sweeping the tower. Rescue? Alex whispered. David wasn't sure. Something about the chopper felt wrong. Then, over the security radio, a distorted voice crackled through. Military evacuation, survivors, make your way to the roof. Clyde exhaled in relief. Thank God. But David wasn't so sure. If there was really a rescue, why wasn't the military broadcasting on national channels? Why did the voice sound more like a trap than salvation? As the undead banged on the stairwell, David had to make a choice. Stay and fortify the tower? Or gamble everything on a rooftop rescue that might not be real? The flickering security monitors cast an eerie glow over the survivors huddled in the Trump Tower security office. The rooftop camera still showed the helicopter, its searchlight cutting through the smoke-filled sky. The radio transmission crackled again. Military evacuation, survivors, make your way to the roof, repeat, rooftop evacuation in progress. David Mercer wasn't buying it. This isn't right, he muttered, narrowing his eyes at the screen. No military call sign. No proper frequency. If they were real, they'd be coordinating with emergency services. Not just broadcasting on a dead security channel. Alex Carter, the journalist, exhaled. So, what? It's a trap? Maybe. Or maybe they're just not who they say they are. Luis paced near the door, pistol in hand. It's still our best shot. We stay down here, we're dead. The infected are already in the stairwell. Rachel Owens, the office worker they had rescued, crossed her arms. If we go up, we need a plan. We can't just rush the roof and hope they don't shoot us on sight. David nodded. First, we need to secure a safe path upstairs. If we can clear a few floors, we'll have a fallback point in case things go south. Then what are we waiting for? Luis asked. David checked his weapon. Let's move. But none of them noticed Clyde, the janitor, slipping out of the room until it was too late. On the 58th floor, the penthouse. Eric Langston was losing patience. His father's private escape route had to be somewhere in the building, but so far, no one had found it. Vincent Chang, the head of security, stood near the windows, scanning the city with binoculars. His two guards remained near the doors, rifles in hand. Lily, Eric's assistant, sat on the couch, sweating profusely. She had been bitten, but so far, she was still herself. I don't feel right, she whispered. Eric swallowed hard. He had known her for years. Could he really leave her behind? Before he could respond, the elevator chimed. Eric and Vincent spun toward it. That elevator was supposed to be locked down. The doors slid open. A short, nervous-looking man stepped out, wearing a janitor's uniform. Whoa, don't shoot, he stammered, raising his hands. I'm Clyde. I came to warn you. Vincent lowered his rifle slightly. Warn us about what? Clyde took a shaky breath. There's a group of survivors on the 20th floor. They're trying to get to the roof. Eric frowned. So? They're just like us, trying to escape. Clyde licked his lips. Yeah, but the thing is, their leader? That guy Mercer? He doesn't trust the helicopter. He's saying it's a trap. Vincent exchanged a glance with his men. A slow smile spread across his face. "Well," Vincent said, "maybe it's time we made sure they don't make it to the roof at all." Back on the 20th floor, David's gut told him something was wrong. They had just started moving toward the stairwell when Rachel suddenly asked, "Wait. Where's Clyde?" David's heart sank. Son of a bitch. He spun toward the security office. Clyde was gone. "Damn it," Luis muttered. "Think he ran?" David shook his head. "No. I think he just sold us out." Before they could react, gunfire erupted from above. Automatic weapons. Then, the radio crackled again. But this time, it wasn't the fake military transmission. It was Vincent Chang's voice. "Attention survivors on the 20th floor. I know you're listening." David's blood ran cold. "You have two choices," Vincent continued. "Come to the 58th floor and surrender your weapons, or you won't make it to the roof at all." A moment of stunned silence followed. Then Alex whispered, "We just went from running from zombies to running from other survivors." David clenched his jaw. "No. We were never on the same side." He turned to the others. "We need to move, now. Before they cut us off." Rachel swallowed hard. "But what about the infected?" David's eyes darkened. "I'd rather take my chances with the dead than the ones who are still breathing." Meanwhile, on the roof, the helicopter hovered above the rooftop of Trump Tower, its engines roaring. A masked soldier stood by the open door, scanning the building below. Through his earpiece, a voice came through. "Have you secured the target?" The soldier tapped his radio. "Negative. There's resistance inside the tower." A long pause. Then the voice replied. "Then eliminate them. We only need one survivor. The rest are expendable." The soldier nodded. He reached into his vest and pulled out a small device. A laser designator. He pointed it at Trump Tower's upper floors, and activated it. The air inside Trump Tower was thick with tension. David Mercer knew they had minutes before Vincent Chang and his armed men came for them. The only way to survive was to move fast, but between the gunmen above and the horde below, their options were running out. "All right," he said, eyes scanning the terrified group. "We don't fight them head-on. We don't have the numbers. We move fast, stay quiet, and take the maintenance stairs. That should keep us off their radar." "But what if they're watching the cameras?" Rachel Owens asked. Alex Carter, the journalist, glanced at the flickering security monitors. "We smashed them." Luis nodded. "Deny them their eyes." David turned to the others. "We make for the 50th floor. It's a commercial space, lots of cubicles, good for cover. If we're lucky, we can loop around their patrols and get ahead of them." Rachel hesitated. "And if we're not lucky?" David's grip on his pistol tightened. "Then we don't stop moving." No one argued. They had no other choice. Meanwhile, on the 58th floor, Eric Langston leaned against the glass windows of the penthouse, watching as Vincent Chang barked orders to his men. "Secure the stairwells," Vincent said, loading his rifle. "Cut off every exit. I want them trapped." Clyde, the traitorous janitor, fidgeted nervously in the corner. You sure about this?" "I mean, we could just take the chopper and go." Vincent shot him a cold look. "We don't leave loose ends." Clyde swallowed hard. Eric clenched his fists. He wasn't a fool, he could see exactly what was happening. Vincent wasn't just securing his escape. He was eliminating anyone who could slow him down. Then something caught Eric's eye. Outside, above the tower, the helicopter was still circling. A red laser dot flickered on the glass. His stomach dropped. "What the hell is that?" he muttered. Vincent followed his gaze. His face went pale. "Shit," he whispered. Eric took a step back. "What? What does it mean?" Vincent's grip tightened on his rifle. It means we're running out of time. On the 45th floor, the escape begins. David and his group had made it 5 floors up before they ran into their worst nightmare. The maintenance stairwell was packed with infected. A mass of snarling, rotting bodies swayed in the darkness, jammed between the narrow walls, their dead eyes turning toward the sound of survivors approaching. Rachel froze. Oh God. David acted fast. Back. Back. But before they could retreat, gunfire erupted from above. Vincent's men were coming. We're boxed in. Alex shouted. David had seconds to make a choice. They couldn't go up, Vincent's men were there. They couldn't go down, the horde was waiting. Then he saw it. A door labeled Mechanical Access, Rooftop Systems. He shoved it open. This way. Move. They rushed inside, Luis slamming the door shut behind them. The room was filled with air ducts, breaker panels, and massive ventilation shafts. A cold wind whistled through the space, hinting at an outside opening. There. Alex pointed toward a maintenance ladder leading up to the 50th floor. But before they could move. Bang! The door behind them exploded inward. 2 of Vincent's armed men stormed in. David fired first. 1 shot, straight to the chest. The first gunman collapsed, gasping. The second man raised his weapon, but Luis tackled him before he could fire. They struggled, fists flying, until Luis finally grabbed the man's knife and buried it in his throat. The body slumped to the floor. David grabbed Luis's shoulder. You good? Luis wiped blood from his face. Yeah. Let's go. Back in the penthouse. Eric Langston had seen enough. Vincent was using him. The so-called military evacuation wasn't coming for all of them, just one. He had to get out. His eyes flicked to Lily, still alive but getting weaker from her bite wound. She was turning, but not yet gone. Eric grabbed her hand. Come on. We're leaving. She barely had the strength to stand. Vincent noticed. Going somewhere, Langston? Eric forced a smirk. Just stretching my legs. Vincent stepped closer. You try to run, and you're dead. Eric's heart pounded. He had to think fast. Then he spotted something behind Vincent. The security panel. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Eric grabbed a chair and swung it into the panel. Alarm triggered. A loud, blaring siren filled the penthouse. Vincent's men jerked in surprise. Eric grabbed Lily and bolted for the exit. Vincent snarled. After them. On the roof. The helicopter pilot checked his radio. Sir, he called to his commander. The tower's defenses are compromised. Do we extract the target? A cold voice replied. Negative. The asset is non-compliant. Initiate contingency. The pilot hesitated. You mean? A long pause. Then the final order came. Blow the building. The pilot's hand hovered over a switch. A single red button. He pressed it. Deep inside Trump Tower, a series of hidden explosives armed themselves. A countdown began. 10:00. 9:59. 9:58. Back in the ventilation room. David and the others reached the top of the ladder, gasping for breath. They had made it to the 50th floor. But then, over the security radio, a distorted voice crackled through. Attention all personnel, the building will self-destruct in 10 minutes. Silence fell over the group. Rachel stared at David in horror. Did they just say? David's stomach sank. The helicopter wasn't rescuing anyone. They were going to wipe the tower off the map. David took a deep breath. He looked up. They had 10 minutes to reach the roof, or die with the city. 10:00. 9:59. 9:58. The cold robotic voice echoed through the speakers, sending an icy chill down David Mercer's spine. Self-destruct? They weren't just being hunted, they were being erased. We need to move, now. David shouted, leading the group out of the mechanical room and into the 50th floor office space. The open-plan area was dark, abandoned. Desks were overturned, papers scattered across the floor, and a few corpses sat slumped in their chairs, untouched by the infection. But the real threat wasn't the dead. It was Vincent Chang's men, and the countdown ticking down to their deaths. 9:42. 9:41. 9:40. Rachel Owens pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Jesus Christ, they're gonna take down the whole tower? Looks that way, Alex Carter muttered, checking his pistol's magazine. These bastards aren't just here to kill us. They want to cover their tracks. Luis reloaded his shotgun. Then we make sure we're not here when it happens. David took a deep breath, mind racing. We need a way up. The elevators are dead, the main stairs are full of infected, and Vincent's men are watching the maintenance routes. There's gotta be another way. Rachel's eyes widened. The executive elevator shafts. David turned to her. What? I used to work in this building. The executives have their own private elevator shafts, separate from the main ones. If we can pry open the doors, we can climb up. Luis let out a dry laugh. Climbing an elevator shaft in a collapsing building? Great. David didn't hesitate. It's our best shot. Let's move. 9:12. 9:11. 9:10. Meanwhile, on the 58th floor, the penthouse escape. Eric Langston pulled Lily down the hallway, his heart pounding. Behind them, Vincent's men scrambled to restore order after the alarm was triggered. Vincent stormed out of the security room, rage twisting his face. Get after them. Eric had seconds before Vincent's men regrouped. He had to act fast. Then he saw it. A fire escape ladder, leading to the helicopter access pad. Eric gritted his teeth. Almost there. Eric, Lily gasped, struggling to keep up. Her infection was worsening. She wouldn't last much longer. I'm not leaving you, he whispered, tightening his grip. They reached the roof access door. It was locked. Damn it. Eric slammed his fist against it. A voice came from behind him. You're not getting out that way. Eric turned just in time to see Vincent raise his rifle. Game over, Langston. Back at the executive elevator shaft, the climb. David and the others reached the executive elevators, prying open the doors with a crowbar. A dark, empty shaft yawned before them. Rachel gulped. That's a long way up. David peered inside. We can use the maintenance ladder. It runs up the side of the shaft. Alex looked down. And if we fall? Luis gave him a grin. Then we don't have to worry about the explosion. 7:55. 7:54. 7:53. David went first, climbing swiftly. The others followed, one by one, gripping the rungs like their lives depended on it. Because they did. Rachel climbed behind David, her breath ragged. Below, Alex and Luis followed. Then, gunfire erupted from the hallway. Vincent's men had found them. Move! Move! David shouted. Bullets tore through the elevator shaft, pinging off metal. Rachel screamed, gripping the ladder tightly as a bullet ricocheted inches from her hand. Alex cursed. We're sitting ducks here. Luis pulled his pistol. Then let's give him something to think about. He fired blindly down the shaft, forcing the gunman to retreat. David kept climbing. Above, the doors to the 57th floor were still closed. Their only way out. 5:10. 5:09. 5:08. We're running out of time. Rachel gasped. David reached the doors. They wouldn't budge. Luis climbed up beside him. Move. He pulled out a shotgun and blasted the doors open. Boom. The group scrambled inside, collapsing onto the 57th floor. David turned back, just in time to see a grenade roll into the shaft. Down. The explosion ripped through the elevator shaft, sending fire and shrapnel roaring up past them. David shielded Rachel, while Alex and Luis hit the ground, coughing through the smoke. The floor shook beneath them. Luis sat up, coughing. Tell me that wasn't a support beam. Alex's face went pale. The whole building's gonna come down before the bomb even goes off. David grabbed Rachel's hand and pulled her up. Then let's make sure we're not in it. 3:45. 3:44. 3:43. They bolted for the roof access stairwell. The final stretch. On the roof, the final confrontation. Eric Langston stood face to face with Vincent, the city burning behind them. You think you're getting out of this alive? Vincent sneered. You're nothing. Just another disposable asset. Eric laughed coldly. If I'm disposable, then why the hell are you so scared of me? Vincent raised his gun. But before he could pull the trigger. Bang! A single gunshot rang out. Vincent staggered, blood pouring from his chest. Eric blinked. He hadn't fired. Then he saw her. Lily. Still shaking, her infected veins pulsing, she had raised a stolen pistol and shot Vincent in the back. Vincent dropped to his knees. You, he gasped. Lily's eyes glistened. You left us all to die. With her last ounce of strength, she raised the gun and put another bullet in Vincent's head. He collapsed. Dead. Eric rushed to her, but she swayed, barely conscious. I'm not gonna make it, she whispered. No, Eric begged. Just hold on. But before he could say another word, the roof access door burst open. David, Rachel, Luis, and Alex stumbled onto the rooftop. Eric's eyes widened. They made it. But the countdown was still ticking. 2:00. 1:59. 1:58. The helicopter hovered, the masked soldier inside waiting. David turned to Eric. We're getting out of here. But I don't think we're gonna like where they take us. 1:58. 1:57. 1:56. The wind howled across the rooftop, whipping at the survivors as the helicopter hovered overhead. David Mercer could barely hear himself think over the roaring blades, but his gut told him one thing: this wasn't a rescue. The black military-style chopper wasn't marked with any official insignia. The side door was open, and inside, a masked soldier stood holding an assault rifle, watching them like a hawk. The same cold voice that had announced the self-destruct sequence crackled through their radios. You have 60 seconds to board the helicopter. Non-compliance will be met with termination. Rachel Owens gritted her teeth. Great. So either we get on, or we get vaporized with the building. Luis wiped blood from his face. Yeah, but the real question is, where the hell are they taking us? Eric Langston barely heard them. His focus was on Lily, her body slumped against his chest. She was dying. The infection had spread too far, her skin was pale, her veins blackening. She wouldn't survive another 10 minutes, let alone wherever this chopper was going. Eric looked at David. We don't have time for second guesses. We get on that bird, or we die here. David cursed under his breath. He hated this. But they had no choice. Let's move, he shouted. They sprinted for the chopper, the rooftop trembling beneath them as the self-destruct timer ticked down. 1:20. 1:19. 1:18. As they neared the aircraft, the masked soldier motioned for them to stop. Drop your weapons. His voice was distorted through a radio headset. Now. Luis scowled. Oh, come on. The soldier cocked his rifle. Drop them. David exchanged a look with Alex and Rachel. They were outgunned. One by one, they tossed their weapons onto the rooftop. Eric hesitated. Lily needs a medic. The soldier cut him off. Get in the chopper. Now. 0:58. 0:57. 0:56. They climbed aboard, pulling Lily in last. As soon as they were in, the soldier slammed the door shut and knocked twice on the cockpit wall. The pilot didn't wait. The helicopter veered away from Trump Tower, racing into the burning sky. 0:30. 0:29. 0:28. David turned, looking out the window as the building shrank below them. Then he saw it, the rooftop collapsed inward. A second later. Boom! The explosion ripped through Trump Tower, sending a massive fireball into the sky. The shockwave rocked the chopper, and for a moment, David thought they were going down. But the pilot steadied the aircraft, banking away from the ruined cityscape. David exhaled. They made it. But now, they were in unknown hands. Inside the helicopter, unwelcome passengers. The survivors sat silently as the helicopter sped into the night. No one spoke. They were all thinking the same thing: where are they taking us? Rachel glanced at the masked soldier. Who the hell are you guys? No answer. Louise scowled. Come on, man, we just escaped a damn war zone. Least you can do is tell us where we're going. Again, silence. Eric clenched his fists. Lily needs help. She's dying. The soldier finally spoke. Not my problem. Eric lunged forward in rage, but David grabbed his shoulder. Not here. Not now. Eric gritted his teeth, but he backed down. Instead, he looked at Lily. She was barely conscious, her breath shallow. Stay with me, he whispered. Lily's lips barely moved. Eric. Her hand trembled. He held it tight. Alex leaned close to David, lowering his voice. We need a plan. We don't know who these guys are, or what they want. David nodded. Agreed. He looked back at the soldier. If you're not gonna talk, at least tell us this: are you the government? The soldier turned his head slightly. Then, finally, he spoke. We're bigger than the government. David's stomach twisted. What does that mean? Rachel asked. The soldier said nothing. Instead, he raised his rifle just slightly, a warning. The message was clear: don't ask questions. David exchanged glances with the others. This wasn't a rescue. It was a kidnapping. Unknown destination, the facility. After an hour of flying over the darkened wasteland of New York, the helicopter finally began to descend. Through the windshield, David saw a massive structure, hidden deep in the ruins. A military compound. Fences. Guard towers. Searchlights cutting through the darkness. As they landed, heavily armed soldiers surrounded the aircraft. More men in black uniforms. The masked soldier opened the door. Get out. David hesitated. Then he saw the snipers on the rooftop. They had no choice. One by one, they stepped onto the landing pad. Lily was barely moving now. Eric carried her in his arms, his face set with determination. The lead soldier motioned toward the facility. Move. As they walked, David noticed something disturbing. Beyond the fences, in massive cages, were zombies. Dozens. Hundreds. Rachel saw them too. What the hell is this place? A cold voice answered. It's where the future begins. David turned. A man in a black suit stood at the entrance, his hands clasped behind his back. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with icy blue eyes and a surgical calmness to his expression. Welcome to Project Genesis, he said. You're going to help us save the world. David's blood ran cold. Something told him they weren't getting out of here alive. David Mercer's gut told him one thing: this wasn't salvation. As he stared at the cold-eyed man in the black suit, standing at the entrance of the heavily guarded facility, he knew they had walked straight into another nightmare. Behind them, the helicopter's engines powered down, leaving only the sound of moaning in the distance. Beyond the perimeter fences, hundreds of zombies stood in massive containment cages, their rotting fingers reaching through the bars. Some were normal infected, shambling, mindless husks. Others were different. Stronger. Faster. Mutated. Rachel Owens whispered, "This place is wrong." The suited man smiled faintly, stepping forward. "You're safe now." David didn't believe that for a second. Eric Langston barely acknowledged the man, his focus was on Lily. Her body was limp in his arms, her breath shallow, her infection far advanced. "She needs medical help," Eric snapped. "Now." The suited man nodded. "Of course." He gestured to two men in lab coats, who approached with a gurney. Eric hesitated. "Where are you taking her?" The man's voice was calm, calculated. "To be treated." David caught the lie instantly. But before Eric could argue, Rachel squeezed his arm. "We don't have another option." Eric gritted his teeth, then gently placed Lily on the gurney. The doctors wheeled her through the doors, disappearing into the sterile white hallways of Project Genesis. As soon as she was gone, the suited man turned back to them. "My name is Director Elias Vaughn. And you've just been given the greatest opportunity of your lives." David's jaw clenched. "You mean we're prisoners?" Vaughn smiled. "You're guests." Louise scoffed. "Yeah, guests with armed guards pointing guns at our heads." Vaughn ignored him. "Come inside. There's much to discuss." David knew they had no choice. With armed soldiers flanking them, they stepped into the belly of the beast. Inside Project Genesis, the truth revealed. The facility was pristine. Unlike the ruined, blood-stained world outside, this place was untouched. Bright lights. White hallways. State-of-the-art technology. It felt like walking into a high-tech research lab. Except for one thing. The smell. It was subtle, but beneath the sterile air, David smelled blood. Something terrible was happening here. Vaughn led them into a briefing room, where a large digital screen flickered to life. "You've heard the rumors," he said, hands clasped behind his back. "That this outbreak was an accident. That the infection spread too fast to contain." He turned to face them. "That was a lie." Rachel's eyes widened. "You're saying?" "This was no accident," Vaughn said smoothly. "It was a test." David's heart hammered. "You're saying someone did this on purpose?" Vaughn smiled. "We did." Silence. For a moment, no one spoke. The words were too monstrous to process. Luis took a step forward. "You son of a..." Before he could finish, a guard slammed a rifle into his back, knocking him to his knees. Vaughn didn't even react. "You don't understand," he said patiently. "This virus was designed to force evolution. To perfect the human race." Alex stiffened. "You mean?" "Weeding out the weak," Vaughn confirmed. Rachel's stomach twisted. "That's genocide." Vaughn tilted his head. "It's survival. The world was broken long before this. We've simply accelerated what was inevitable." David's blood boiled. "This isn't survival," he growled. "It's mass murder." Vaughn exhaled softly. "And yet, here you are. Alive. Proving my point." He stepped closer. "Which is why I'm offering you a choice." David tensed. "What choice?" Vaughn's smile was almost fatherly. "Join us." Luis let out a bitter laugh. "You gotta be kidding me." "I'm quite serious," Vaughn said. "You've survived against impossible odds. You've fought through hell and made it here. That makes you valuable." He walked to the screen, pressing a button. Footage appeared, zombies being tested. Mutated creatures in containment. Soldiers training with advanced weaponry. And then, a massive, underground city. David's breath caught. Beneath Project Genesis was an entire hidden world. Skyscrapers. Vehicles. People moving freely. A civilization untouched by the apocalypse. Rachel stared in shock. How? We prepared, Vaughn said simply. He turned back to them. You can be part of something bigger than yourselves. A new world order. Where the strong survive. He paused, then delivered the real ultimatum. Or, you can refuse. David didn't need to ask what happened if they refused. Vaughn smiled. Take the night. Think it over. He turned to the guards. Take them to the barracks. As they were escorted out, David's mind raced. They had to get out of here. Deep within the facility, the experiment begins. Meanwhile, in a sterile medical bay, Lily lay strapped to a table, barely breathing. Doctors moved around her, checking vitals, preparing syringes filled with a black liquid. Vaughn entered, stepping to her bedside. He looked down at her with interest. She's a fascinating case, one doctor noted. The infection is spreading, but she's still conscious. Vaughn nodded. Then, gently, he leaned in close. Don't worry, Miss Carter, he whispered. You're about to become something greater. Lily's eyes fluttered open, and for the briefest moment, they glowed red. Vaughn smiled. Welcome to the next stage of evolution. Project Genesis, the barracks. David Mercer sat on the edge of his cot, staring at the cold, sterile walls of their prison. Because that's what this was. They weren't guests. They weren't survivors. They were lab rats. Luis paced the room, his fists clenching and unclenching. We're not seriously considering this, right? Join them or die, what kind of bullsh? No one's joining them, David muttered. Rachel Owens exhaled sharply. So what's the plan? Because I'm guessing they don't let people just walk out of here. Alex spoke up from his cot. And even if we escape, we're in the middle of a damn fortress. David's jaw tightened. Then we don't just escape. We destroy this place. Everyone fell silent. It was a crazy idea. Insane, even. But after everything they'd seen, the experiments, the zombies in cages, the underground city of the elite living while the world burned. There was no other choice. Luis nodded. I like it. Question is, how? Before David could answer, a guard opened the barracks door. Director Vaughn wants you, the guard said. Now. David exchanged looks with the others. Time was up. They were about to find out if this was their last day alive. The truth about Lily. Vaughn led them down a dimly lit corridor. David noticed something, this part of the facility felt different. Darker. Colder. Then he heard it. A heartbeat monitor. They entered a glass-walled observation room. And there, strapped to a medical table, was Lily. Eric Langston gasped, rushing forward, only for two guards to hold him back. Let me go, he shouted. What did you do to her? Vaughn simply smiled. She's alive, he said. Stronger than ever. David's stomach churned. Lily wasn't moving. But her skin was different. Paler. Veins darkened beneath the surface. Then, her eyes snapped open. Glowing red. Eric's breath hitched. No. Lily turned her head, looking right at him. Her lips curled into a slow, eerie smile. I feel incredible, she whispered. Rachel's blood ran cold. She's not human anymore. Vaughn's smile widened. No, he agreed. She's something better. Eric struggled against the guards. You turned her into a new species, Vaughn interrupted. The perfect evolution. David's pulse pounded. They had to get out. Now. Lily's gaze locked onto Eric. Don't be afraid, she murmured. We can all be together. Forever. Eric's face twisted in horror. That was the moment David knew. Lily was gone. And whatever was left wasn't her anymore. The escape plan. Vaughn turned to the group. So, have you made your decision? David took a slow breath. Yes. Then he moved. Fast. Before the guards could react, he lunged at Vaughn, grabbing his pistol right off his belt. Bang! One guard down. Rachel spun, snatching a fallen rifle. She fired, another guard dropped. Luis charged forward, tackling a scientist into the wall. Eric? He didn't move. His eyes were locked on Lily. David grabbed his arm. Eric, we have to go. Eric tore his gaze away. Then he ran. Alarms blared. They sprinted down the corridor, weaving through the sterile halls. Vaughn's voice crackled over the speakers. Stop them. Lethal force authorized. David's heart hammered. Almost there. Rachel shot out a security camera. Luis kicked open a door. Beyond it, a storage room full of explosives. David grinned. Well, that's convenient. Luis grabbed a C4 pack. Guess we're blowing this place to hell after all. Hell unleashed. They set the charges. One at the research labs. One at the zombie containment area. One in the power core. By the time they reached the exit, alarms were screaming. David held the detonator. One deep breath. Then, boom! Everything exploded. The ground shook. Flames roared down the hallways. Rachel grabbed David's arm. Go, go, go! They sprinted toward the hangar. Soldiers were already there, but so were the zombies. The explosion had released them. A flood of ravenous undead crashed into the guards. Gunfire. Screams. Chaos. David saw their exit. A truck, engine running. Move! They jumped in. Luis hit the gas. The facility burned behind them. And in the rearview mirror, David saw Vaughn. Standing in the flames. Smiling. The final stand. Miles away, they finally stopped. The city was still burning. But for the first time in weeks, they weren't running. Luis slumped in the driver's seat. Holy shit. We actually made it. Rachel exhaled. For now. Eric sat in silence. David placed a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry about Lily. Eric swallowed hard. She's not dead. David frowned. Eric. She's still out there. His voice was haunted. David didn't argue. Because he knew it was true. Lily was alive. And whatever Project Genesis had turned her into, she'd be coming for them. One day. David gazed at the burning skyline. This wasn't the end. Not even close.